Well, good day, everybody, and welcome back. Well, in the last week or two, I have been inventorying and documenting my entire typewriter collection so I can update my typewriter database galleries with new photos and new type samples, but also more exactly, I wanted to update it with all the new machines I've gotten since I last updated, which was a couple years ago. So if you are a typewriter collector and you have not started a typewriter gallery on the typewriter database, there's a link down below in the description, and I would encourage you to do that. Get your collection documented, because the more data we have, the more accurate information we can figure out as to the dates of all of our machines. And so in the process of documenting all of my typewriters, I came across this beauty. This is an Olympia Reporter. This is made by Nakajima in Japan. It has a really sturdy molded plastic carrying case, and it's been sitting in its case right by the door to this office for a long time, and I walk by it every day to get in and out of the office, and it's been sitting there patiently waiting for me to start using it again. I finally got around to using it because of having to do some typing samples, etc. And I rediscovered what a great machine this is. I'm not going to do a full review today because if you go back into a previous Typewriter Video Series video, which I'll link down below, and it was right after I acquired this machine from my friend Kevin, and at the time that I made that review, it has the powered carriage return, but it was very sluggish to return. You kind of had to help it. And that was because the drive belt was slipping. It was actually stretched. Well, since then, I have replaced the belt, so we're going to talk about that, talk a little bit about the machine, and about where I think electric typewriters fit into the typewriter collecting hobby, and really more importantly into the world of writing to paper. So stay tuned. So this is a mechanical type bar typewriter with a carriage, a cloth ribbon, etc. But it's assisted by an electric motor. There's an electric motor, runs a belt that drives a toothed spindle that underneath the keys, and the linkages, when you press a key, the linkage interferes with that toothed spindle, and the spindle operates the typewriter to move the type bar to the paper. So it's an electrically assisted mechanical typewriter. That's what type bar machines are. I think they're great, and this happens to be one of the best I've ever used from the standpoint of ergonomics. The design of it, I think, is really handsome, and the speed at which you can type is really phenomenally fast. I don't know if these were actually engineered to out-type a Selectric. I don't think they were, but these are really fast. You couldn't find a more practical typewriter for fast typing in such a relatively small package. It does weigh 18 pounds or over 8 kilograms. So it's not a flimsy little thing, despite its plastic outer body shell. It's a solid mechanical typewriter inside. Well, I first had to figure out for my own personal records when I first acquired this machine, and some of the machines I've been really good about documenting when I get them, the date, where I got them from, like the thrift store machines. Oftentimes I'll have the original receipt, and so I know the place I bought it, the date, time, how much I paid. This one was a little bit more elusive because I had to go back in my typewritten journal notebooks and figure out when I first typed on it, and it turned out to be in the fall of 2020. This is my initial typing on this machine. Looks like I was already getting very creative with it. And then I found on 18th of November, just a few days later, this is a one-type page article that I wrote using this typewriter. I might have put this on my blog as well. And then 18th of November, I did another one-type page entry on this machine, and it's printing very nicely with a new ribbon. I'm very pleased with it. This is also where I talked about getting a O-ring from the hardware store and disassembling it and installing it, so that's pretty cool. This is the 30th of November on the Olympia Reporter. It's looking quite nice. But then I go back to other typewriters again. I'm pretty certain now that I got this around late 2020 time period, but I didn't really do a whole lot of testing on it or using it. Now, finally, because of me having to update my typewriter database, when I got around to this machine, it was like, oh man, I forgot how good this is. First of all, if you remember from that video, the automatic power carriage return was sluggish, and that was due to the original toothed belt was slipping. Well, this is the original drive belt. It is a V-belt with teeth on the inside surface, and it's not a stiff V-belt. It's made of soft synthetic rubber. You don't want a stiff belt because the pulley around the motor shaft is very small in diameter, and the belt has to be able to bend to a relatively small radius going around that pulley. In fact, you can see the shape of it. This was where the typewriter sat unused for years probably. This is where the belt was sitting around that small pulley. It has a permanent bend in it right here. So this belt isn't broken, it's just stretched a little bit. It was slipping and causing, when there are heavy loads like during the powered carriage return, it would slip. So I went to the hardware store and got one of these O-rings. It's roughly 4-inch diameter and 1/8 of an inch cross-section, round cross-section O-ring. That's what I've been using. It seems to work fine. I don't have any problems with it. And these are very inexpensive and easy to get at almost any hardware store in the United States here. The carriage return is quite energetic and works just fine. One thing I did observe when I was going back through some of the early writings that I did with this machine was I did comment back then on how fast and easy it is to type on, and I still hold that to be true today. This is one of the best performing typewriters in my collection. And of course, we have to talk about the feature differences between this Nakajima and the Smith Corona electrics. So the big difference I see is, first of all, this has 1.5 line spacing. Also, this has half character spacing. There's actually a button for next to the spacebar for half spacing the carriage, specifically for the purpose of inserting a missing letter in a already typed word or line. So that's an interesting feature that the Smith Coronas, at least of the era that I have, didn't have. So when I researched the age of this machine in the typewriter database, there was actually no other examples of the Olympia Reporter. Mine was the only one. But I did know through the actual header at the top of the database pertaining to all the Olympia typewriters that, at least Olympia Nakajima typewriters we're talking now, that the serial number gives you a month and year date code. And the way that works is the first digit of the serial number is the last number of the year. So the first digit of mine is a 3. So it's going to be a year ending in 3, either 73 or 83 or 93, let's say. And then the next number is a 7. So that's going to be the month code. In this case, it's July, January being 1, December being a letter. It goes up through 9, like September's 9, and there's letters afterwards. So it's actually kind of hexadecimal in some ways. And you can also tell from looking at the serial number that those first two numbers in the serial number are a little bit lower, offset from the others, so they probably pre-printed the month and date code, and then they printed the other numbers right after it. So this is July of some year ending in 3. So I wasn't really sure if it was 73 or 83, and I didn't think it was 93. So another resource on the typewriter database website are the NAMDA Blue Books. And Ted Monk has scans of the old National Office Machine Dealers Association Blue Books from various years. This machine was listed in the 1984 NAMDA Blue Book, and it was listed in the 1982 NAMDA Blue Book, but it was not listed in the 1978 NAMDA Blue Book. So, therefore, I assume this is a 1980s era typewriter. It's a 1983 by the date code. July of 1983 specifically. According to that Blue Book, this has a maximum paper size of 12.375 inches and a maximum line length of 11.75 inches. So that is a really handy resource. If you're going into the typewriter database and you don't see too many other machines or any other machines of your kind, go to those other links in the typewriter database of the NAMDA and other Blue Books and see if you can figure out what year it was just from it being included in that year's annual Blue Book. That'll tell you some data right there. And that really helped me to research the exact age, the date of this machine. So it's July of 1983. A lot's going on in the world. The Cold War is very intense, and type bar electrics were on the way out. Daisy wheel electronic typewriters were already the newest thing, and typewriters with word processing and digital data storage were already coming online. They were like hybrids between electric typewriters and computers. So these were on their way out. These were the last of the electric type bar machines that Olympia made or had made by Nakajima. I think they're a reasonable quality machine. They're certainly the newest type bar electric you can buy that's of any decent quality. And it is one of those typewriters that tends to disappear. That's always my criteria for a workhorse typewriter is, do the mechanics of the machine always stay up forefront in your mind? That's always distracting you. You're always thinking about how to operate it, or do the mechanics of operating the machine disappear into the background, allowing you to really think on the words themselves? That's what this machine does. It is a workhorse typewriter. So one of the things I typed on this machine the other night was, when you get into typewriting, you have to talk about writing to paper. Typewriting is about mechanical writing to paper. And we can write to paper either with pens or pencils, but also typewriters. Other than pens and pencils, there's really no other direct way to write directly to paper other than a typewriter. That's where typewriting starts at. Typewriting starts with the idea that I want to create directly to paper rather than a screen, a digital screen. I wrote that on this machine, and I thought it was a very inspiring idea that typewriting and paper are inextricably, intimately linked, and you can't get to the one without going through the other. So when I was reading about this machine in the 1984 NAMDA Blue Book catalog, not only did it tell me size of the carriage, size of paper, and the maximum line length it makes, but the suggested retail price was $335 back in the early 1980s. Where does that fit? Mid-range, I guess, in the price range of typewriters? But, well, for a lot of collectors, this kind of typewriter is just a no deal. But if you come into typewriters from the perspective of wanting to mechanically write to paper, because you're a writer and you like the paper workflow and you want an efficient paper workflow, there's few other typewriters that will do the job as well as this one. And that's why I appreciate these kind of typewriters in my collection, along with all those other mechanical metal marvels. And so I hope this gives you guys some encouragement. If you happen to see one of these things out in the wild, don't pass it up without looking for it. And if you happen to have a friend, acquaintance, relative, neighbor who is interested in typewriters strictly from the perspective of writing, I would not overlook one of these typewriters. Because in the end result, for me at least, it's really all about enabling our creativity. And so, as always, I hope you stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.